Hi, my name is Woody Arnold, and I like comic books. And today, I am going to be talking about Stargate Universe #1, which this is not a new book. Actually, I think they're on issue 4 right now. And I actually was at a comic shop yesterday while talking to the local guy. The Dreaming, by the way, in the University District in Seattle. Great store if you want to check it out. It's kind of a comic shop / game store, and so I was sitting there chatting with Aaron, the owner, and he happened to whip out that issue, which had come in on his order, which he was getting ready for today. And I didn't even know the series existed, and so promptly bought it, checked out the first issue, and well, here's the deal. I'm a Stargate fan. I like Stargate Atlantis the best. Stargate SG1 definitely should have ended much sooner. The when the Ori story started, it basically felt like they didn't really have a plan, and they just needed something, so they kept it going. It certainly should have ended like season 6 or 7, but and then Stargate Atlantis, though. I really love that show. Had a lot more charm, I think. Certainly was fresher. And then they came up with Stargate Universe, mainly an economics decision. To keep Stargate Atlantis going for season 6 would just make the show too expensive for the Sci-Fi Channel to justify, even though the show was certainly successful enough. And then with Stargate Universe, it was a bit of a turn, and anyone that was a fan of the series knows what I'm talking about, because Battlestar Galactica, the rebooted series, had just ended, and that was a huge success, a massive hit for the network. A lot of people are saying it's one of the greatest sci-fi shows ever made. I say it's good. I don't know if I put it that regard, but I think Farscape gives it a run for its money in that title. But I think that it's pretty obvious, given the timing and when these things happened, that with Stargate Universe, they wanted to do something like Battlestar Galactica. That there was probably a commandment from the network that's what they wanted to see, something similar. And so, and it was very much the exact same tone, very serious. But the problem was that for fans of Stargate, who had basically grown up on this charming show that didn't take itself very seriously, definitely poked fun at its own irreverence, and knew what it was, and was what it was without any embarrassment. The characters are very different than they were from the film that it was based on, but the Jack O'Neill character, everybody was just very like, took their situation seriously, but also very lightheartedly. They certainly had no problem poking fun at the villains, and the villains were over the top and stupid and would not have worked under any other set of circumstances, and yet they just went for it, and it was a perfect formula. They caught lightning in a bottle, and when they did Stargate Atlantis, they were able to continue somehow. The formula continued to work, and that's what brought in the fans. That's what the fans wanted to see. And when they did Stargate Universe, completely turned it around, and the pacing was off. The humor was completely gone. It was totally serious, no irreverence of any kind, and I don't think a single joke was told in the course of that show. And it was a quality show, well made, well executed, but they completely dismissed what made Stargate successful and what the fans wanted to see. And by the time they started to find their footing with the show, all the fans had already checked out. The storyline of the first half of season 1 could have been told in 2 episodes, maybe 3, and that's but it should have been the opening movie, and then they were off to the races. It just, they didn't know what they had, and it couldn't find a new audience, and that it was basically a brand new show. So I enjoyed it, but I had to put up with some shit before I got to the point where it started to get good. And when it got good, it got good. But most of the fans had already left. Now, that is Stargate. Now to get back on topic, so there's a company here. Let me see if I got this on the name. It's called American Mythology Productions. And this is a company I'd never heard of before, and I think that they came into existence solely for the purpose of making these comic books. American Mythology basically had acquired the license to Stargate comic books from what the previous company, which I believe was Dynamite, and started basically producing comic books in partnership with MGM that were in continuity with the series. Ultimately, depending upon the future of the franchise, this may or may not hold. You know, I'm quite sure that if we ever did get a continuation of any of those series, they would kind of go in their own direction, with no regard to the comics. But from what I've read about what the plans were for Stargate Atlantis, the continuation that this company did does follow with what was going to happen in season 6, and you can tell that the people writing this story are fans, and they really care about what they're doing, and they're doing the kinds of things that I might have done. You know, they dove really deep into the mythology of Stargate Atlantis, and really are doing something for the fans. Now, that being said, oh, and of course, Stargate Universe, very much the same thing. The first issue was a fun read, and from a viewpoint of somebody that wanted to know what happened, because it left off in a cliffhanger that I don't think that they thought the series was ending when they did their last episode, and it left things very, very, very difficult, very very hopeless, and definitely left the future of at least one character very vague. Now, this comic book opens up exactly where the series ended, and picks up, completely handles everything very well, and you feel like you are, of course, enjoying, like, picking up, like, you're along for the ride if you were a fan of the series, and it all makes logical sense. And the big reveal, which I don't want to ruin for anybody, but it's like, oh yeah, that works. But then there's a mystery, is like, how is that even possible? Anyways, the thing is this is really good storytelling. However, there is a negative here. And when I picked up the Stargate Atlantis book, I didn't know if I was going to keep reading. I eventually did. But you basically have what amounts to a marquee title. You have, that's kind of generous, I think, for Stargate really say that, but you have a book which is almost a license to print money. You have a guaranteed fan base that will buy the book, okay? But the books are written only for the fan base, and if you're not a fan, you're probably not going to know what's going on. You literally, to enjoy the Stargate Atlantis series, you literally have to watch all 5 seasons of the show to really know what's going on. And you'd have to have watched Stargate SG-1 as well. That's the other problem, is you'd have to be a fan of both shows, and a serious fan at that. I don't know there's enough Stargate fans to sustain a series. I'm actually surprised that they made it past the first miniseries of 4 issues. It blew me away, actually, that Stargate Atlantis continued, and I'm even more shocked that Stargate Universe is being made. I believe they launched the series with a Kickstarter. No surprise they got the money, but I don't think they got much. Here's the thing. For a book that's guaranteed to sell, right, that they even got this thing into Diamond, got it into all the shops, they clearly have done a good job on the story, but the art is shit. The lettering is shit. The coloring is passable at best. The panel work is garbage. Some of the way they introduced the series in the first issue of Stargate Atlantis, horrible. Like the first couple of pages, they did kind of a TV show clip show, which would work on TV, did not work in comic book form. Stargate Universe, they did a better job setting things up, but they still did the clip show bit, and I think somebody that didn't know the show would have been like, what? And in fact, I even had a trouble with it. Like, I wasn't sure some of the clip show bits. I'm like, I may need to go back and watch the show. I don't know what these things are. You know, granted, I've seen Stargate Atlantis 3 times, the whole series, so, you know, I love it. I've only seen Stargate Universe like once, 1.5 times. So, Yeah, the quality of execution is really bad on these books, and I do not see this as a book that's going to pull in a serious comic book reader. Um, like the artist, I can't imagine. I could get artists at the level of skill that they put on these books for $30 a page, if I wanted to, and it would look just as good. Faces are inconsistent from page to page. Proportions are sometimes off. I mean, everything is what it's supposed to be. You know, they clearly had good references from the show and all that, but it's just Jesus. And this level of quality continues to persist like this from issue to issue. These are really bad, very poorly made, unprofessional comic books. I occupy the bottom rung of the comic book industry. Okay, my budget for a book is about $100 a page, and that's about what I can afford, and that includes me doing a huge chunk of the work myself, which I'm not really getting paid for. And I turn out a comic book that is 10 times better than this. So I'm really shocked, but it also isn't a surprise that much either, because in actuality, adaptations of stuff you love tend not to do well. I remember picked up the Terminator 2 adaptation by Marvel, horrible. They picked up, they put a bottom rung artist and creative team on it. DC put out a Star Trek 5 adaptation one time, horrible. They did that in one issue. Like the Marvel, when they put out these tie-in comic books for the MCU movies, oh my God, the artists on those things are horrible. But not every adaptation is bad. Marvel on the Star Wars books is putting out top tier creators on those books, the best artists they have, the best writers they have, best of everything, and those look amazing. Dark Horse turned out absolutely first-rate Star Wars comic books, for years before the license went over to Marvel. Their Predator, Aliens, and Terminator books are amazing. They're all done really well. So it's not always like that, obviously, but this is a book where I loved it from the standpoint of a fan. I've enjoyed the story of all of these books so far, but everything else is subpar. It's not even subpar. It's way below subpar. So if you're a serious comic book reader and you want to get into Stargate, this is not the book for you. Actually, the Dynamite books weren't any good either. It's kind of funny. I hate bad mouthing it, but like I picked up one of the Dynamite books before a trade that I found at a con, and I actually bought it from the guy who wrote the book, and it was horrible. One of the worst comic books I ever read, which is a shame because I know the guy and he's really nice. He's great. Most of those guys are, but you can't knock it out of the park every time. So Stargate Atlantis, Stargate SG-1 for most of it, and Stargate Universe, really well-made quality shows. If you want good science fiction, watch them. I wouldn't pick up these books unless you were a fan of the show. But as a fan, if you want to know what happened and something that's like believable and actually fits into the continuity, these books are amazing. But you gotta definitely have to be patient with them. So there you go. So I would give Stargate Universe issue 1 a 3 out of 5. But if you're a fan, it's certainly a 5 out of 5 must buy for the story.